All I wanted was a quiet little piece of heaven. Backed up to a small, underused patch of green space nestled inside the neighborhood, a spot that nobody cared much about. The HOA claimed it was part of the community park, but it was basically a neglected lot with patchy grass, overgrown bushes, and a rotting picnic bench no one had sat on in years. One spring, after spending months cooped up working from home, I decided to do something fulfilling with my weekends. So I dusted off my gloves, grabbed my shovel, and started digging. I wasn't putting up a jungle gym or building a shed. I was just planting a garden. A humble little garden with tomatoes, lavender, sunflowers, and a few rows of herbs along the edges. The first weekend went fine. A couple of joggers passed by and even complimented me. One guy walking his dog said, "It's about time someone fixed this dump up." That gave me the push to go even further. Added some painted stones for borders, a small compost bin, and a cozy bench where I could sip coffee and listen to the wind rustling through the leaves. But then came Karen. I should have known something was up when I saw her standing at the edge of the park, arms crossed like she was guarding the Queen's jewels. Her name was Brenda, but everyone just called her Karen behind her back, HOA president, retired school principal, and the self-proclaimed protector of neighborhood standards. She marched up to me like I had vandalized the Mona Lisa. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, squinting at my spade like it was a weapon. "Planting some vegetables," I said calmly, not wanting to escalate. "Just trying to bring a little life to this area." "This is HOA land," she snapped. "You're not allowed to alter common spaces without board approval." I raised an eyebrow. "It's a garden, not a hotel. I'm not hurting anything." "That's not the point," she huffed. "There are rules. You can't just claim public property." Now, I'd done my homework. I knew that while the HOA managed certain areas, the ownership wasn't as clear-cut as she made it sound. And I also knew that this particular patch of land didn't show up on any HOA-maintained site maps. It had been excluded years ago in some convoluted land swap deal the HOA quietly buried. I tried to reason with her. "Look, it was just weeds and trash before. I'm not building a pool, just planting some rosemary and squash." But she wasn't hearing it. She stormed off mid-sentence, muttering about violations and fines. That night, I got an email from the HOA, a formal notice demanding I cease and desist all unauthorized landscape modifications. It was classic Karen no compromise, just control. And it didn't stop there. The next morning, I noticed one of my flower beds trampled. A week later, my compost bin had mysteriously disappeared. My small bench, vandals or concerned citizens, according to the HOA, had broken it into pieces. I knew exactly who was behind it, but I didn't retaliate. Not yet. Instead, I gathered documents. I dug through county records. I contacted the original property developer. I even visited the local zoning office. And what I found made my jaw drop. The community park wasn't HOA property at all. When the neighborhood was first developed, the builder had planned to turn that patch of land into a playground. But the project never happened. When the HOA was formed, they assumed management of several plots, but this one had been left in legal limbo. A few years back, the land was quietly auctioned off due to unpaid taxes, and guess who bought it? Me. Had purchased the land 3 years ago at a county auction. It was one of those weird side investments I made after reading a blog about tax-delinquent properties. I paid a few $100 for it, thinking I might resell it later. I'd completely forgotten about it till now. So yes, the garden Karen hated was on land I legally owned, but I didn't tell her yet. I wanted her to overplay her hand. The final straw came a week later on a Sunday afternoon. I was planting some squash starters when I heard sirens and 2 squad cars rolled up next to the curb. Karen stood nearby with her smug gotcha expression, arms folded like she'd just scored the winning touchdown. "This is the guy," she told the officers. "He's trespassing and destroying HOA property." I calmly stood up and brushed the dirt from my jeans. "You're making a mistake," I said. "I can prove it." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please." The officers were polite, but serious. "Do you have any documentation showing you're allowed to be here?" one of them asked. I smiled, pulled out a manila folder I'd kept nearby, just in case, and handed over a stack of papers. The deed, the auction confirmation, tax receipts, zoning maps, even a letter from the county confirming my ownership. The cop looked through it for a long moment. Then he turned to Karen. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "this land isn't owned by the HOA. It belongs to him." Karen's mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. "That's not possible," she said weakly. This is a park." "Not anymore," I replied. "It's private property. And I'm the owner." The officers backed off. They apologized for the confusion and drove off, leaving Karen speechless and red-faced. That's when I knew this was just the beginning. The moment those cops confirmed I owned the land, Karen's whole body language changed. She went from smug to stunned in a matter of seconds. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But this wasn't just about a misunderstanding anymore. Karen had crossed a line. She had tried to publicly embarrass me, falsely accused me of trespassing, and involved the police all because I dared to plant a few vegetables on what she assumed was her turf. And now, standing there humiliated, she didn't apologize. She didn't even say a word. She just stormed off, practically seething. I figured that would be the end of it. WASN single quotes. The very next morning, I received another email from the HOA this time with the subject line, "Urgent Community Notice. Unauthorized use of private property." In the body of the message, the HOA board, no doubt under Karen's direction, accused me of creating a nuisance garden, attracting pests, and building illegal structures. They claimed that even if I owned the land, I was violating neighborhood covenants by disrupting the aesthetic harmony of the community. And they demanded I remove all non-conforming elements within 10 days or face legal action. The kicker? They CC'd the entire neighborhood. Oh, she wanted a war? So I gave her one dot first. I went public. I posted the full story on the neighborhood forum, the real one, not the HOA's boring email list. I included photos of the garden before and after, the documents proving my ownership, and screenshots of the HOA's threats. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of neighbors chimed in. "Wait, you own that land?" I always wondered why the HOA didn't maintain it. Karen just hates that someone made it look better without her permission. People loved the garden. One mom even commented that her kids had started calling it Tomato Park. Another neighbor said her dad, a retired vet, liked to walk over and sit on the bench to get fresh air. In less than 48 hours, my post had over 100 comments. Most of them supported me. Some even said they wanted to donate tools, seeds, or help with watering. What was once my personal project was turning into a quiet community favorite that didn't sit well with Karen. On day 3, someone knocked on my door. It was a man in a dress shirt and tie holding a folder. An attorney hired by the HOA. He handed me a cease and desist order and said the HOA was initiating legal proceedings to protect the visual integrity of the community. I read the paper. It was mostly Fluffno's actual jurisdiction over my land, just a bunch of citations from HOA rules that didn't apply to me. Still, they were clearly trying to intimidate me. So I responded the only way I knew how. I called my own lawyer. Not only did my attorney laugh at the cease and desist, but he also pointed out something I'd missed. Since my land wasn't under HOA jurisdiction, their rules were meaningless. On it. And because I wasn't paying HOA dues for that property, they had zero authority to regulate it. That opened a new door. My attorney drafted a formal response, citing property law, zoning code, and HOA boundary maps. Then we filed a public notice with the county, reaffirming my ownership and my right to develop the land for non-commercial use. I could plant anything, install benches, put up lights, basically do anything short of building a house. Meanwhile, Karen didn't stop. She had flyers printed and distributed them door to door. "The illegal garden must go," they read in bold red letters. "This is a safety issue." She accused me of attracting wildlife. It was one rabbit. Of being a fire hazard. Everything was watered daily. And, my favorite, threatening property values. But now the neighborhood was on my side. A group of residents formed a casual garden watch, offering to help water and protect the garden while I was at work. A retired couple even brought over some old patio chairs and painted them bright blue to match the flowers. The garden wasn't just a personal project anymore, had become a symbol. Still, Karen wasn't done swinging. She tried to call in a county inspector. Said I was operating an unlicensed public garden. But the inspector, after visiting, told her flat out that I was within my rights and even complimented the setup. He said it was one of the nicest uses of private property he'd seen in a while. Then she tried to dig into my deed. She submitted a request for a land review, hoping to prove I didn't own the entire plot or that there was some easement she could weaponize. But guess what? The land had a clean title, with no liens, no easements, and full ownership in my name. Her last attempt backfired completely. By the end of the second week, Karen's grip on the HOA was slipping. People were starting to question her leadership, and some even began organizing a recall vote. I didn't push for that tie, didn't need to. She was unraveling on her own. She came to my door one last time. It was a weekday evening, and I'd just finished watering the basil. She knocked hard, like she was still clinging to whatever authority she had left. "Can we talk?" she asked, clearly holding back frustration. I stepped out. "Go ahead." She tried to smile, but it didn't quite land. "I think this whole situation has gotten out of hand." I stayed silent. "I mean, perhaps if you just scaled it back a bit," she continued, "took down the compost and the extra seating, we could, smooth things over." I smiled. Back. "You mean after you called the cops, hired a lawyer, and tried to rally the neighborhood against me?" Her fake smile faltered. "I think we're past smoothing things over," I said. "But you're welcome to come enjoy a tomato once they ripen. I hear they taste better when grown on my land." She didn't respond. Just turned and walked away. And, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But I wasn't done just yet. After that final doorstep conversation, Karen did something she wasn't used to doing. She disappeared. No more flyers, no more emails, no more HOA threats. It was almost eerie how quiet things got, especially from someone who had treated the HOA board like her personal kingdom. But I knew Karen, that silence wasn't surrendered, was scheming. So while she retreated, I got proactive. First, I made the garden official. I ordered a custom wooden sign and posted it at the edge of the property. "The community garden privately owned. Publicly enjoyed" beneath it. I wrote in smaller print, "Respect the space. No HOA rules apply here." Then I invited the neighborhood. Literally. I printed out some colorful invites and hand-delivered them. Nothing fancy, just a Saturday afternoon garden, open house with lemonade, snacks, and a little local guitarist who offered to play for free when he heard about the drama. The turnout was incredible. Dozens of families came. Kids ran through the rows of flowers. People brought lawn chairs, folding tables, even extra food. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to before showed up just to shake my hand and say thank you. One couple, new to the neighborhood, told me they were nervous about all the strict HOA talk when they moved in, but the garden made them feel like the place actually had heart. Karen, she didn't show, but her presence was still felt. Halfway through the event, I noticed a few HOA board members huddled near the sidewalk, watching everything. They weren't smiling, but they weren't interfering either. Maybe they realized by now how much support I had. Maybe they were calculating the political cost of going against a guy with a deed and a tomato patch. Either way, they left without saying a word. Then things escalated, but not against me. 2 weeks later, news broke. Karen was being investigated for misappropriation of HOA funds. Apparently, someone on the board, I have a guess, who filed an internal complaint. It claimed Karen had used HOA's money for non-approved expenditures, including thousands spent on community improvement consulting and legal correspondence. When pressed, it was revealed that the legal letter sent to me, paid for by HOA dues, the flyers she printed and distributed, billed as public notices, the so-called consultant, her niece who lived in another state. Suddenly, the same woman who weaponized the HOA rules was under fire for violating them. The fallout was fast. Karen was suspended from her role pending a full audit. The board held an emergency meeting, which turned into a shouting match according to someone who was there. Several members voted to begin the process of formally removing her. Petitions started circulating around the neighborhood, calling for her resignation. The once untouchable queen of the HOA had become its most controversial figure, and I just kept watering my plants. One afternoon, while trimming the sunflowers, an older gentleman approached. He introduced himself as George, one of the original HOA founders from years ago before Karen had risen to power. "I just wanted to say," he said, looking around the garden, "this place reminds me of why we moved here in the first place. Before the rules started choking everything." "Thanks," I said, brushing dirt off my gloves. I didn't expect it to turn into all this. "Funny how one small act can expose everything underneath," he replied. People needed a reminder that this isn't some gated dictatorship. It's a neighborhood. That hit me, because the garden was never supposed to be a protest. Wasn't meant to shake up the HOA or pull Karen off her throne. It started as a way for me to breathe, to reconnect with something real and grounded. But sometimes, the smallest act of peace becomes the loudest act of rebellion, especially in a place where control has run wild. Eventually, Karen resigned. She didn't send a goodbye email. No speech, no apology. Just a single line in the HOA newsletter. Brenda Kay has stepped down from her duties due to personal reasons. The neighborhood reacted with a collective sigh of relief. Soon after, the board sent out a new proposal, this time asking for community feedback on how to use shared spaces. Several residents suggested turning another nearby lot into a second community garden modeled after mine. A vote was even proposed to reduce certain HOA restrictions, especially around minor landscaping and decorative projects. Change, it seemed, was finally taking root. As for me, I didn't become some neighborhood hero. I didn't want to run for the board or become the anti-Karen. I just kept tending my garden. But something was different now. Kids came by after school to water the plants and pick herbs for their moms. One guy offered to build a little free library box on the corner. A teen who was studying photography asked if he could take pictures of the flowers for a school project. What used to be a scraggly, ignored patch of land had become the heart of our street, and every time I looked around, I remembered that this whole thing started with Karen trying to shut me down. The irony, her attempt to assert power exposed how little power she actually had. And in trying to erase one small act of growth, she accidentally planted the seed for something bigger. A reminder that neighborhoods aren't built by rules, they're built by people. People who care. People who plant things. People who stand their ground. even when someone calls the cops over a tomato.